All right, good morning, everyone. In this video, I'm just going to do a detailed review of adding and subtracting integers and the multiplication and division of integers. So I'm going to go into certain cases that might seem confusing, and we'll solve them and show that we're just following the same steps that we are for simpler cases. Okay, so let's start with addition and subtraction. So with addition and subtraction, we always want to keep the number line in mind. Right now I have this empty number line with just 0 in the middle, and that's because I might fill out the intervals with different things as we go along, as we solve examples. For the first example, I want to use this problem. It's 5 minus 3. So in this case, we have two negative signs over here, and a lot of people find this very confusing. And let's just follow the 3 steps that we set to begin with. In step 1, we want to know where do we start, right? Step 2, we want to know which direction do we go from there. And then step 3, we want to know how far. So in this case, we know that we start at 5. So from 0 here, we're counting, this is a positive 5, so we're counting, let me put them as 2, 4, 6, 8, negative 2, negative 4. And our 5 is over here, right between the 4 and the 6. So this is where we're starting. Now, which direction do we go? This is going to be the tricky part here, because we have our first negative sign, which would suggest that we go in this direction. But then we have our second negative sign, which reverses that. So instead of going in that direction, we're actually going in the positive direction. And you can think of this as saying not. So you can say Mr. Omar is not cool. Is not cool, which really means that I'm cool, which is the same as just like not saying any of those. So you can say Mr. Omar is cool, which is very, very true. Okay, so seeing two negative signs is like seeing not, which just means that it's actually a positive sign. So we're starting here at 5. This is where we started. And then we're counting 3, so we're going 6, 7, and 8. And we end up here. So our result would be 8. All right, next example. In this example, I'm going to have negative 3 plus 5 minus 7. So in this case, we have 3 terms. We have negative 3, we have 5, and we have negative 7. And we want to know what this is equal to. Now, in this situation, we just start from the left and move from left to right, one step at a time. So for now, we'll start with negative 3. This is where we start. So step 1, where do we start? So we're starting at negative 3. So in this case, I'm gonna number them like this. And we have negative 3 over here. So this is where I am starting. Now, we're adding 5, so in terms of direction, there's nothing confusing here because it's just plus 5. So we're going in the positive direction, and we're going 5. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we get to 2. All right. So negative 3 plus 5 is 2. And then now we look at the negative 7. So instead of negative 3 plus 5 minus 7, we can simplify this expression to look like this. It's going to be negative, it's going to be 2 minus 7. Why? Because this negative 3 plus 5 simplified to just 2. So in this case, we're just asking what is 2 minus 7? What is 2 minus 7? So again, we're here already. We're already at the 2. And now we're going in the direction of in the negative direction, and we're going 7. So we're going to go back here. Let me use a pink, and then we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, which means we ended up, let me mark this as negative 5. So this is where we ended up, and this is the solution to this problem. Okay, so remember, we ask ourselves, where do we start based on the first number? Which direction do we go based on the signs? So if we have more than one step, then we have to do this more than one time. And lastly, how far do we go? And that's based on the value of that number. So we moved 5 to the positive direction because there was a value of 5. Then we moved 7 to the negative direction because there's a value of 7. This last example is kind of silly, but I'm giving it to you just so you, in case you were wondering. If you have a question like this, 7 minus 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 2. Again, every time you see a minus, it's like the word not. So if I say not, 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 that really means that the first two cancel each other. So if I say Mr. Omar is not cool. So let's start by just looking at the first one. If I say Mr. Omar is not cool, then we're saying just that he is not cool, right? If I say not cool, that means he is cool, so that means those two cancel out, essentially. Having two of them just means that just is the same as having none of them. And so we're left with one not. So in the end, the statement is saying Mr. Omar is not cool, which is actually false. In case you, I'll be looking for that in your notes, by the way. Make sure that you're right, that it was false. Okay, so in this case, 7 minus 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 2, we can take those first two negative signs and really they cancel out. But instead of becoming 7 plus 2, since there's an extra minus sign here, it ends up being just 7 minus 2, which again, we'll go to 7, go back 2, and we will get 5. All right, now let's move on to multiplication. With multiplication, a lot of you have already seen this table with me on Zoom. We said if we have a positive number and a negative number, and then another positive number and another negative number, and if we multiply those together, if we multiply a positive by a positive, we get a positive answer. If we multiply a negative by a negative, we get also a positive answer. And the opposite is true if we multiply different signs. So with multiplication and with division, if you have different signs, so let me say, if you have different signs, then your answer is negative. If you have same signs, whether they're negative or positive, as long as they're the same signs, then it's positive. And let's look at a couple of examples. So if I say 4 times negative 7 times 2. Again, these are 3 numbers, so we'll go from left to right, one step at a time, right? So we'll first look at 4 times negative 7. We'll ignore the times 2 for now. So 4 times negative 7, 4 is a positive number multiplied by a negative number. So we know that the answer to this is negative. 4, okay? And 4 times 7 is 28. So that's good. And now we're left with negative 28 times 2. Now we repeat the same process. This is a negative number multiplied by a positive number. So we know that the answer is negative. And then 28 times 2 is 56. So this is our final answer. Let's do a couple more examples. Okay, so the first example here, we have negative 7 times -1 times -5. Again, we're moving from left to right. So we're looking at -7 times -1 first. These are two negative numbers multiplied by each other, so we know that the answer is positive. And then 7 times 1 is just 7. So we end up with positive 7 multiplied by, let me do it in blue, -5. We go through the same process. This is positive multiplied by negative, which means the answer is negative. And then 7 times 5 is 35. And we're done. Here, this is division, and division works exactly the same way as multiplication when it comes to determining the signs. If we have two positive numbers, then it's positive. If we have different signs, then it's negative. If we have two negatives, then the result is positive. And so when I say 20 divided by -5, sorry, we're going to start first by looking at the first two numbers. 20 divided by -5, that's a positive, and that's a negative. And so the result, or the quotient is negative. And then 20 divided by 5 is 4. So we have -4 here divided by -2. Oops. In this case, we have two negative numbers. We have -4 divided by -2. So in this case, the result would be positive. So we have negative divided by negative is positive, and then 4 divided by 2 is 2. And so our final answer is just 2. All right, I've assigned you an activity or a task that is a little bit more complex. It all involves multiplying, adding, subtracting, and dividing more than two numbers. So sometimes 3, sometimes 4 numbers, just to get all of this confusion out of the way and make sure you're super confident with it. In the next class, we're going to start discussing word problems and how we can translate negative numbers in different situations to just English sentences. So we're going to be applying our knowledge of integers to real-world applications.